quick question. A star that often dims in the night sky, I'm going to call it Betelgeuse. I don't think it's that, but I had a crack at it. There's an explanation for why it dims now.
Yeah, so Betelgeuse or Betelgeuse, depending on it. In fact,
Okay.
Betelgeuse is a bit more the Arabic name. So this is a star in the constellation Orion. Sometimes Australians would call that the saucepan. And this star is exciting for people like me because it's one of the best stars and options. That star is going to blow up in our nighttime sky in the coming years, or thousands of years potentially. And it dims, as you said, and really changes its brightness quite often. And as you're seeing on your screen now, for the first time, realize there's actually a second star. This star it's only about 4 times further than the Earth is from the sun. So these things are really packed in. You're not even the distance between Mars, but you have 2 big stars right next to each other, except the other star is a really young star that we usually don't see.
One of the most intriguing discoveries making headlines recently has to do with Betelgeuse. Yes, the red supergiant star in Orion that everyone thought was on the verge of going supernova a few years ago. Well, as it turns out, Betelgeuse might not be alone. A newly published study has presented evidence that what we've always believed to be a single star system may actually be a binary system. According to this paper, astronomers may have imaged a second star orbiting Betelgeuse. This could finally explain some long-standing mysteries about Betelgeuse's behavior, especially its strange periodic changes in brightness. The candidate companion has been provisionally designated Betelgeuse b, but for the sake of clarity and a bit of flair, let's use the nickname proposed by the paper's authors, Siwarha. The name Betelgeuse is derived from Arabic, meaning the hand of the giant. In this context, Siwarha, which translates roughly to her bracelet, is a beautifully poetic name for a star potentially orbiting around the giant's hand. It's not officially recognized, at least not yet, but it gives us a helpful and evocative way to talk about this possible new star. Before we dive too deep, a very important caveat. The existence of Siwarha is not confirmed. The detection was only at about 1.5 sigma confidence, which is far below the threshold typically required for a definitive discovery in astronomy. That said, the team behind the study believes the signal is real, and they have some compelling reasons to think so. First off, the brightness excess detected near Betelgeuse is precisely where you'd expect a companion star to be, assuming Betelgeuse's mysterious periodic dimming is being caused by an orbiting object. Second, this detection was made in 2024, which just so happens to be the point in Siwarha's predicted orbit where it would be farthest from Betelgeuse as seen from Earth, the best possible chance to spot it. Even more curiously, the same instrument didn't detect the signal in 2020, which aligns perfectly with the idea that Siwarha would have been hidden behind Betelgeuse at the time. So, although each individual data point isn't strong enough to prove anything alone, together they paint a surprisingly coherent picture. So, assuming for a moment that Siwarha is real, what exactly is? Based on the gravitational influence it would need to exert on Betelgeuse, the most likely candidate is a young A or B-type star with a mass roughly 1.6 times that of our Sun. It would orbit Betelgeuse every 6 years, and from our perspective, its orbit would be edge-on, meaning we're seeing it almost directly from the side. That would place Siwarha just about 4 astronomical units from Betelgeuse's surface, closer than Jupiter is to the Sun. Now, that's especially wild when you remember that Betelgeuse is huge. Its outer layers already extend well beyond the orbit of Mars if it were placed in our solar system. And here's the kicker. Even though Betelgeuse is reaching the end of its life, it's actually extremely young. While it's about to go supernova in the next 100,000 years or so, it's only about 10 million years old. For context, that's younger than most modern mammals, including bears, giraffes, deer, and even the early ancestors of humans. Unfortunately, that youth comes at a cost. It's very unlikely that any planets exist in the system. Planet formation takes a lot longer than 10 million years, and the massive radiation from Betelgeuse likely blew away any material that might have become planets before they even had a chance to form. So both Betelgeuse and Siwarha probably orbit alone, without any planetary companions. And since Siwarha is so young, it's likely not even a main sequence star yet. That means it hasn't started fusing hydrogen in its core. It's still in its pre-main sequence phase, finishing up the turbulent process of star formation. But here's the tragic twist. It may never reach the main sequence at all. If it exists, Siwarha is spiraling inward, slowly being dragged toward Betelgeuse by friction with the giant star's extended atmosphere. Because it orbits so close, it's experiencing orbital decay. And within about 10,000 years, it's predicted to fall into Betelgeuse and be completely consumed. Which brings us to the big question, the one that probably brought you here in the first place. What happens when Betelgeuse goes supernova? As we said earlier, Betelgeuse is expected to go supernova sometime in the next 100,000 years, but that doesn't mean it'll happen soon. In fact, it almost certainly won't happen in our lifetimes. There was one paper a few years ago suggesting Betelgeuse might explode within decades, but it relied on flawed data. And while we don't know Betelgeuse's exact distance, it's somewhere between 400 and 650 light-years away, which means we're seeing the star as it was just a few centuries ago, not millions of years like some mistakenly think. Still, if Betelgeuse were to go supernova in the next 10,000 years, and if Siwarha exists and hasn't yet fallen in, what would happen to it? Despite how dramatic supernovae are, they don't always destroy nearby companion stars. The exact outcome would depend on how far Siwarha is from the blast, but even at close range, it's unlikely to be completely obliterated. It would definitely take some damage and likely lose some outer layers, but it could endure. What's more, the force of the explosion would likely eject Siwarha at incredible speeds, turning it into a runaway star flying through the galaxy. And if Betelgeuse leaves behind a neutron star or black hole, we could end up observing both of them racing away from the site of the explosion in opposite directions, a sort of cosmic slingshot. In short, Siwarha is doomed no matter what. If Betelgeuse doesn't explode soon, it'll get swallowed up. If it does explode soon, it'll be blasted into the cosmos. And to top it off, it won't even live long enough to begin hydrogen fusion in its core. That's one tragic star. But if Siwarha turns out to be real, it's not just a curiosity. It would actually be incredibly important. For starters, a binary system allows us to accurately calculate Betelgeuse's mass using orbital mechanics. That's something we've never been able to do with precision, since Betelgeuse was always assumed to be alone. It could also help us better determine its distance, which would tighten up models predicting when and how it'll go supernova. So that's everything we know, or think we know, about Betelgeuse's possible companion star, Siwarha. It might be real, it might not. But if it is, it's a rare opportunity to learn more about one of the most famous stars in the sky, and to witness a drama that's been unfolding quietly just a few hundred light-years from Earth. Let's hope we can confirm Siwarha's existence soon, because the story of Betelgeuse just got a lot more interesting. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, check out my other videos about planets and space exploration.